Story 1. I suspect my boyfriend is trying to baby trap me. I've been dating my boyfriend for a year. I live with him. My family life isn't great. My dad has been out of the picture for as long as I remember, and my mom is very mentally unstable. She has been diagnosed with BPD but isn't on treatment. She has always been a jealous person. She showers you with love and affection, but if you don't do the same for her, she will blow up. I've seen her do that to all of her partners and to me. She has been against me doing anything other than staying home with her for as long as I remember, against me having friends, studying for school, working out, etc., always putting me down. She has had better and worse times, and the last year has been one of her downs. She went absolutely mental when she found out I had a boyfriend. She tried to prohibit me from seeing him, made scenes whenever I spent time with him, saying I am changing, etc. She went as far as trashing my room when I left for a whole day. One day I came home, and she told me I either stay here with her and break up with him, or when I leave, she will change the locks and never let me come back. I called my boyfriend crying, and he offered for me to move in with him. I agreed. She has sent me pictures of her burning everything I had in my room, that she never wants to see me again, and that I am a terrible daughter. She made posts on Facebook calling me, etc. Everything has been going okay until a week ago. I came back from school and told him we had vocational orientation and that a nurse had come to tell us about her career. I told him I thought what she did was really cool and I would love to be a nurse. He asked me if you had to study to be a nurse and I said you had. It was about 3 years, I think. He then asked me when we would get married. I laughed and said maybe after I finished the career. He frowned and said that he wanted to have kids young. I told him we could, just not that young. We still had plenty of time and I thought it was best for both of us to have careers before having kids. There wasn't a rush. He said he was running late for work, and the conversation was cut short. He has since then done something really weird, in which he starts talking semi-sarcastically about when I start studying and asking me things like if I'm going to go to parties or make more friends or if I'll still have time for him. When I ask him why he is talking like that, he will deny using any tone. He has also started to try and convince me to have sex without a condom, saying that he will pull out. One time, he even went as far as ignoring me asking him to put a condom on and trying to go in me, and he stopped just because I screamed at him. 3 days ago, I saw him doing something with the drawer where we keep our stash of condoms open. When he saw me, he closed it quickly. I grew suspicious and went to look at them after he left. Some of them had little dots like they had been poked. There were just 1/4 of them, so I feel like if I bring this up, he will deny it and say something like they were just broken. The other day, I asked him that if he wanted to have sex without a condom, maybe I should start doing hormonal birth control, and he said those pills make you fat and he doesn't want me being fat. He also made fun of me, saying I was being so dramatic about being scared of getting pregnant, like it was a curse or something. I've thought about talking it out with him and reassuring him that me wanting to go to college doesn't change anything in our relationship and we still have plenty of time to form a family. But maybe I'm being naive. I really do love him, and I don't want to end this relationship. Up until now, he has been the biggest blessing. I don't know what else to do. I don't have access to my own money to get my own birth control without him. I live with him. I don't have anywhere else to go. Update 1. It isn't normal, isn't it? A couple of hours ago, I asked for help in a couple of subs for a specific situation with my boyfriend. Many people gave me advice and made me feel like I wasn't crazy, which I genuinely appreciate, but a lot of advice I was given revolved around me leaving or taking action behind his back. I started thinking, and I don't think the dynamics of our relationship are standard. It would be really hard for me to hide something from him. He takes care of everything money involved, which makes sense because he makes the money, but it is to the extent I don't remember him ever giving me cash. Not even to buy the simplest, cheapest items. Whenever we need something, he goes and buys it, from groceries to clothes to everything. He has made me wait in stores with the things we need for the house for him to come to where I am and pay. Even when he charges my public transport card, he asks me how many trips I need to make and charges exactly the money for them, not 1 cent more. I have access to absolutely zero money. I used to think it was just a quirk of his, but now I feel like it's deliberate. My phone doesn't have a plan. I just use Wi-Fi and have him as my emergency contact. If I'm outside the house, I don't have friends or really any type of relationships that he isn't also friends with. All my friends are people he knew first. If I do anything without him, he insists on dropping me off and picking me up. He asks me for selfies of what I'm doing every hour of the day if we are apart. He convinced me to delete together all of our conventional social media, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, claiming it's better for our mental health, and then he didn't delete his because he realized he needed them for his job. He doesn't know English and has started complaining whenever I consume any media in English, claiming it makes him feel left out and he wants to be able to engage in my hobbies. People recommending me to search for narcissist abuse and other comments made me start to rethink most things I never really put much thought into or minded about. Maybe he has been controlling all along. I just didn't oppose any of his requirements until now. I guess I'm just used to having no control with my mom. It was worse. At least he lets me enjoy myself. She would try to make me feel miserable every hour of the day. But at the same time, it's so much worse. Outside of empty threats, there was very little she could do after I was 13 or 14. She is fat and old, and I have little respect or love for her. She could trash my room or scream or not feed me all she wanted. But she couldn't retain me physically. With him, outside from being way stronger than me, I love him so much. I can't even picture myself ever finding the strength to leave. It really physically pains me to write this. I feel like I am delusional and I want to be. I feel like such an empty shell of a human being. Though I had control of my life for once, I am just in the same spot. Update 2. Hi guys, I have a smallish update. People told me to contact my father's family for help. I tried and he smoothly told me he does not care. I have no close enough friends who aren't friends with him to reach out to, and there isn't a woman's shelter in my city. I am also very adamant about contacting the police because my country's child laws are very strong on putting blood bonds over almost every type of abuse that is not full-blown crude sexual or physical abuse. I do not want to go back to my mom's house at any terms. I know there's a possibility this isn't going to work out, and the way he was acting wasn't okay. But he has been so good to me since now. I feel like he deserves the benefit of the doubt. I spent the weekend trying to avoid having sex. I claimed I had a bruised cervix, which did happen before, so he understood and didn't push it further than just asking for oral a couple of times, which I don't mind. He did make one weird joke on Saturday when I got out of the shower and he saw me, and he said something along the lines of, "If you don't let me get what's mine, I'll have to just get in myself." I guess he could see on my facial expression that I didn't find it funny and assured me he was just joking. I genuinely believe him. It was a joke that came off the wrong way. I managed to talk to a friend and asked for her help today. We skipped the first period and went to a nearby Salida, I don't know how to describe it in English, but a very small hospital for neighborhoods. I got a birth control shot. I hoped I would be able to get a 3-month one, but they didn't have any, so I have to go back every month to get it on the same day. I still think it's better than pills because that means I don't have to hide any item, and it was free, thanks to the girl in Argentina that sent me the link to them. Later, I started stressing about what would happen if the day of the month falls on the weekend and I do not have school to use as an excuse, but I still have many months to go, so that's a future me problem. I will still try to stand my ground on him using condoms, though I know I need some type of backup plan if the situation goes south. So I applied for government aid that's supposed to be for high school students from public schools, and it's supposed to help you with money for uniforms or school supplies. It's not much, but I thought if I created a Mercado Pago account, PayPal for Argentina, that I can create for my home and put my money there in investing mode, I can help it not all disappear from the inflation. I still don't know if I'm going to get accepted because it has a restriction on your parents' income, and I am not sure how much they are making currently. If he still doesn't want me to study when I turn 18, I can apply for a program that helps you for 3 months financially for people who are suffering domestic violence. The program seems too good to be true, though, so if someone in Argentina is reading this, can you tell me if it's as accessible as it seems? As per today, it was such a shitty, weird day. When I got home from school and he got home from work, I saw him and just started crying uncontrollably. He didn't ask me anything. He just held me and told me not to worry, that everything was going to be okay, and that he was going to take care of me. I don't know if he had his own theory on why I was crying or if he didn't want to bother asking, but I ended up falling asleep while hugging him. It made me feel like a hypocrite. I feel like for the last months, for the first time in my life, I was just able to put my guard down and not walk on eggshells, so it kind of sucks being back on analyzing everything someone says or does or makes me do. I woke up like 2 hours ago, and he went back to work. So now I'm writing this, not knowing how to feel. Update 3. If I take a computer that my boyfriend bought me, can I get into legal trouble? My boyfriend has been having a lot of violent activities and I need to get out of the relationship, but I'm kind of tied to him because I don't work and he supports me. I don't have any money that belongs to me, and I don't have many people in my life to ask for help. Several months ago, he bought a laptop for me to use primarily, but he uses it too. I thought about taking it and maybe selling it if I need the money. Can he sue me and put me in legal BU? I am underage. He doesn't care so much about the legal implications as much as that by complaining about it, he can get the police to find out where I am and have access to me back. I'm 17 if it makes a difference. Update 4. Last week, I left my partner. I don't know if I should go to the police. This is a long post, but please bear with me. I need advice in this situation, and I am tired of feeling like I am burdening the very few people I have in my life with my hesitation. I used this account to ask for advice a couple of times to know if my partner was being abusive or if I was being dramatic. You guys were right. From my first post, things just went downhill. I feel like he could sense I wanted to leave and became more hostile, even from slight controlling acts. It escalated to plain violence, physically and sexually. On top of that, I found him cheating and a lot of other worrying stuff on his phone. But that alone would take me a whole post. I didn't know how to leave. I had no money or anywhere to go. At the perfect time, I remembered a very specific figure from my past that had almost left my mind between traumatic events, who had promised to help me if anything wrong happened to me. I'm sorry this is vague. I do not want to give identifiable information. She agreed to help me, so without thinking about it too long, I left him a note explaining why I was leaving without saying where or when. I left with like 2 t-shirts and my phone charger. This was last week Monday. The person who has helped me escape has been nothing short of wonderful, the most loving human being, but that sadly hasn't made this past week any less horrifying. He tried contacting me on all platforms we have, and I answered all his first messages explaining I was okay but I don't want to go back, and blocked him afterward except for email just in case. He started sending messages saying he couldn't live without me, asking me to come back. Then they fluctuated to full walls of paragraphs saying how much he hated me and how much of a horrible human being I am and threatening physical violence. He then sent me a message with a folder with nude pictures he had of me, saying he would share them if I didn't agree to see him. The pictures are half pictures of myself I knew he had, but they don't really show anything that would gain me a ban on Instagram. They are just suggestive. There are a whole other bunch of pictures that I sent him on limited time, agreeing to his persistence for them, and I had specifically asked to not screenshot, but oh well. In these pictures, I specifically didn't show my face or any defining feature that would tell it's me. The real issue comes with a couple of pictures he added where I am fully naked, and you can recognize it's me. I did not take or consent to be taking these pictures. He had taken them while I was asleep or distracted. I don't think he would be dumb enough to share this because I am a minor, and doing so would up his life way more than it would mine. Still, it scares me very much. His actions don't end here. He then proceeded to say if I didn't answer, he would find where I was and go see me. My mom and a school friend asked me where I was because he had gone by their houses demanding to see me and threatening them if they didn't let him in. I made the terrible mistake of telling my mom where I was and what was going on. She didn't have much of a response other than telling me that it was my fault and that I deserved it because she always told me he was bad news. Well, turns out my ex-boyfriend's mom called mine crying and pleading with her to convince me to return home with him because she feared for his mental health and life if I didn't. And the piece of I have the displeasure of calling my mom. I have told her where and with who I am. She informed me that her excuse was that she knows how hard it is to be a mother and she empathizes with her because I am a horrible human being that keeps hurting people. Since this, he has just sent me one email saying he knows where I am and nothing else. I am incredibly terrified and haven't left the house. Who I am staying with has encouraged me to file a lawsuit against him because then I can ask for state help, and I do have some evidence. I don't know what is the value of the evidence I have. The emails, screenshots from his phone talking to his friends about me and low-key admitting to sexually abusing me, pictures of marks he has left on me, and a video of him hitting the door I am hiding against, screaming, threatening to hurt me. I never, till today, thought of taking legal action. This whole experience has made me feel so weak. I feel if one more person starts questioning me, I will lose my sanity. I just want to move on with my life and leave everything that has to do with him behind. I am from a very small town, and people love him and his family. I feel that even if I have all the evidence in the world, the average person will still be on his side. I am an outsider with a mom known for losing her marbles. The only really weird thing that gave me a little bit of hope is that today one of the girls in his friend group contacted me and asked me if I was okay and to know my side of the story. She said she had created her suspicions one night when we went to hang out with his friends and he had gotten really drunk and really mad at me. She said she had seen him throwing and pushing me around. I hadn't even realized he was doing so. She said she believed me, and she was proud of me for leaving. She has no reason for believing me over him or reaching out. It made me feel less crazy. I don't know if legal action will bring me more safety or just more mess. I don't care about justice anymore. I just want to live. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. Am I the jerk for not inviting my wife's daughter to Christmas? I am a 62-year-old man, and 3 years ago I lost my wife Eleanor, who was 59 at the time. We had been married for 28 years. When I first met Eleanor, she had already lost her first husband in a car accident and was raising her daughter, Mia, who was 6 years old at that time and 44 now. Eleanor and I got married when Mia was about 10 years old. Joining their lives, I was unsure about how to be a parent to Mia. I shared my concerns with Eleanor, and she suggested that she would guide us through. I made an effort to build a relationship with Mia by being there for her in ways her father could not be, due to his passing. I drove her to her activities, supported her during school events, helped her with homework, taught her driving and shooting, and shared my interests like fantasy books and Star Trek with her. Despite my efforts, our relationship had its ups and downs. She was polite and we got along, but I never became a father figure to her. I was simply Sam to her. Eleanor and I also had 2 children together, Alex, who is now 29, and Lily, who is 28. Mia got along reasonably well with her half-siblings, despite the age gap. However, there was a time when Mia became very unhappy and withdrawn. After talking with Eleanor, I suggested adopting Mia to provide her with additional support, but she didn't like the idea, and I never mentioned it again. I often had to enforce discipline in our home, which might have caused some resentment from Mia. An incident that particularly stung was during Mia's high school graduation. Each student could buy 2 tickets for the ceremony, and I assumed I would be attending. However, Eleanor informed me that week that Mia wanted to dedicate the second ticket to her late father as a way of honoring him. I was hurt, but I tried to understand her feelings. Given all these experiences and the complex nature of our relationship, I did not call Mia to invite her to Christmas. She placed a photo of him on an empty chair beside her mother. This action seemed to cause pain to Eleanor as well. Mia was a very good student throughout her school years, earning several scholarships because of her hard work and intelligence. Despite these scholarships, there were still some expenses for college that needed to be covered. I stepped in and took care of these remaining costs, allowing Mia to continue her education without financial worries. I was also fortunate enough to be present at her graduation ceremony, a moment of pride and joy. When the time came for Mia to get married, Eleanor and I found ourselves unable to cover the full cost of her wedding. We managed to contribute to about half of the expenses. During the ceremony, Mia chose her uncle, her father's brother, to accompany her down the aisle, taking the place of her father. At the wedding reception, Mia continued a tradition of remembering her father by leaving a chair empty next to my wife, symbolizing his presence in spirit. As for myself, I was not assigned a seat next to Eleanor at the family table. To be honest, the exact location where I was supposed to sit escapes me, as I spent most of my time either at the bar or standing close to Eleanor, who found the whole situation quite difficult to endure. Nevertheless, the wedding was a beautiful event. Once the formal part was over and the dancing began, I felt less concerned about seating arrangements. The joy of the occasion took over and we celebrated together. The birth of Mia's first child brought immense happiness to Eleanor and me. However, it was made clear that while my wife would be affectionately called Grandma by our grandchild, I would simply be known as Sam, not Grandpa. This distinction pained me. When our other child, Alex, had his first child, he offered me the choice to be called Granddad or Sam. Eagerly, I chose Granddad, cherishing the opportunity to have that special title. A few years later, Mia's marriage ended in divorce. This was a challenging time, happening shortly before Eleanor was diagnosed with a serious illness. Mia and her children moved back with us, and we supported her through the divorce proceedings, offering whatever help we could. During Eleanor's final year, Mia's presence was a great comfort to us both. After Eleanor's passing, I found myself deeply affected by grief, struggling to function effectively. Mia stepped up remarkably during this time, taking on the majority of the responsibilities in planning the funeral. Unexpectedly, I learned that arrangements had been made for Eleanor to be buried next to Mia's father, her first husband. This decision caught me by surprise, as it had been made without my knowledge. Mia convinced me that this was in accordance with Eleanor's wishes, a sentiment that brought me some comfort despite the initial shock. In discussions with Alex and Lily, I've expressed my wish to be cremated, a decision they are aware of and respect. This series of events has marked our family's journey through joy, sorrow, and the complex ties that bind us together. Following a decision made during a memorial service where it was shared that arrangements had already been settled, Mia was deeply hurt. She expressed to many people there that she felt like she had become an orphan, left without any close relatives alongside her two children. This revelation was hard for Alex and Lily to accept, causing them distress. Despite this, I tried to bridge the gap by reassuring Mia that she still had a family ready to embrace her if she chose to accept us. She thanked me for my words, maintaining politeness throughout our interaction. Since that memorial service, however, our conversations have become scarce. In the year that followed, I made an effort to include Mia in all our family gatherings, maintaining the tradition even in the face of Alex and Lily's displeasure. I regularly left voicemails for her, inquiring about her well-being and that of her children, but these attempts went unanswered. Over time, my attempts to reach out diminished, although I continued to send gifts for their birthdays and holidays without expecting much in return. In one of my final messages, I reassured her that I was here to assist with whatever she needed, hoping to encourage some form of communication. The situation became more complicated when Lily, planning her wedding for the next year, attempted to mend fences with Mia. With Mia's ex living in another state and her children away for the holidays, she confided in Lily about feeling incredibly isolated. Lily proposed that I should extend a personal invitation to Mia for Christmas, suggesting that her presence along with other family members might offer her some solace. I responded by saying Mia was always welcome but refrained from reaching out directly, suggesting instead that Lily could extend the invitation herself or prompt Mia to get in touch with me. This stance led Lily to accuse me of being unwelcoming for not making the effort to personally invite Mia. Alex, on the other hand, expressed his exhaustion with the continuous effort required to include Mia in our family events. My affection for Mia hasn't waned. She is my daughter. Yet, after numerous attempts to connect without reciprocation, I've come to believe that reconciliation must be initiated by her to truly mend our relationship. So the question arises, am I the jerk for not directly inviting my stepdaughter to our family's Christmas celebration? If Mia happens to watch this message, please know that the person writing this wants you to reach out, as they are ready to share all the information you've previously discussed. The person writing believes strongly that you, the person wondering if you've done something wrong, definitely have not acted poorly in this situation. There's a limit to how much one person can try to connect with another. Throughout Mia's life, you've been there for her during every significant event, offering your support and love every step of the way. It's clear that you have a lot of love for Mia. Despite your efforts, it seems she has consistently kept her distance from you. While reluctance might have been more understandable during her childhood, it has continued into her adulthood. She has maintained this distance despite your never-ending efforts to welcome her back, never once closing the door on her. You've metaphorically opened every door and window to make it as easy as possible for her to return whenever she's ready. Now it appears Mia is waiting for yet another invitation from you. It raises the question, does she expect you to call out to her specifically, as if saying her name repeatedly, like invoking Beetlejuice for her to make an appearance? This writer admits they might not be entirely impartial, tending to agree with Alex's perspective. However, Mia isn't their child. She's yours. From a father's viewpoint, the decision to completely cut off attempts to reach out is complex. Perhaps considering one final attempt, maybe through an email, could be worth it, but directly calling might be a step they're unsure about. The writer is curious about what others think regarding the situation. How do you judge the actions taken? What would you do if you found yourself in a similar position? The writer encourages sharing thoughts and advice in the comments section. Let's delve into what the community had to say in response to the situation. A user named Dude564 shared a piece of wisdom from their grandmother, saying that while she taught him to turn the other cheek in difficult situations, a person only has so many cheeks to turn. In his view, you've reached your limit with no cheeks left to turn, suggesting that you've done more than enough in trying to mend this relationship. Another commenter, Fire34, spoke from personal experience about always trying to be the bigger person and the impact of constantly turning the other cheek. They found that their life significantly improved when they stopped extending themselves beyond reason, hoping the other party would meet them partway. They caution against the idea of trying one last time, as it often leads to a cycle of never-ending attempts and concessions, ultimately preventing you from living for yourself. They advise focusing on relationships that bring joy instead of those that drain you, emphasizing the importance of self-care and happiness. Thomas7863 also weighed in, affirming that you're not in the wrong. He reflects on the situation by acknowledging the long history of trying to be the bigger person and the one-sided nature of the relationship. He finds it understandable that there were expectations when she was a child, but as an adult, her actions, accepting financial support without offering emotional closeness or respect in return, speak volumes. He shares a personal stance that if he were in a similar position, especially after contributing significantly to a wedding only to be treated as an outsider, he would have drawn a line. Moreover, he finds the actions taken during a time of vulnerability, such as making unilateral decisions about burial arrangements without your input, to be particularly hurtful and disrespectful. Thomas7863 empathizes with the exhaustion of continuously trying to accommodate someone who doesn't reciprocate kindness, suggesting that the responsibility now lies with her to make amends. These comments reflect a consensus that while you have made considerable efforts to maintain a relationship, the lack of reciprocity and respect from the other party means it's time to prioritize your own well-being and happiness. The community encourages you to consider your own needs and to find peace in the relationships that are mutually fulfilling. Opie's edit. I am really surprised by how many people have commented on my post. I thought only a few people would comment, but instead, there are so many comments that I can't reply to all of them. I think it's important to explain a few things to make sure everyone understands where I'm coming from. I've always tried my best to be a good parent, especially to Mia, whose mom is Eleanor Selby. I never wanted Mia to feel like she wasn't part of our family or that we were trying to replace her own family. I never saw myself just as someone who gives money for her education. I paid less than half because she got scholarships that covered most of it. I also contributed to her wedding as much as I could. I admit I was upset about who got to sit where and who walked her down the aisle during her wedding. However, Eleanor reminded me that the wedding was about what Mia wanted, not what I wanted. Now, with Lily, Mia's sister, getting married, I will be paying more than I did for Mia's wedding because my financial situation has improved. Lily has made a request that I think her mother would have disagreed with, but I'll save that story for another time. I don't think I've done anything to make Mia dislike me, except maybe for marrying her mom. Despite everything, Mia has mostly been polite and friendly towards me. I wonder if I should have left out the part about the wedding in my post, but at her wedding, after Eleanor passed away, Mia and I shared a special moment that wasn't exactly a father-daughter dance. Mia once told me that her mom was very lucky to have found true love twice in her life. There was a time when Eleanor and I offered to adopt Mia, thinking it would make her feel more included after Lily was born. This didn't go well at all. Mia was very upset and said she didn't want to take my name in a very angry way. Eleanor and I were shocked by her reaction and told her it was not okay to speak to us like that. She continued to be very upset and said hurtful things. I told her such behavior was not acceptable, and Eleanor tried to calm the situation. Later, Mia wanted to talk and said she wanted to live with her uncle. I thought she was just saying this out of frustration because her uncle lived far away. I told her to discuss it with her mom and that I would support whatever decision they made. Mia ended up not moving. Our relationship did improve a bit afterward, but it was never the same. I'm not perfect. I'm just a person who tried his best in a tough situation. Mia doesn't see me, Alex, Lily, or herself as one family, which is sad because I've known her since she was 8. I can't help but love her like family, as I've been there for her since she was playing with dolls. I see her as part of my family. End of Opie's edit. Okay, let's start with what everyone in the community thinks. They all seem to agree that Opie didn't do anything wrong in this situation, and they even had stronger words to say about it than I did. Now I want to share what I think about it all. I didn't mention this before, but I want to make it clear that I don't support what Mia did to Opie. There were several incidents, like the problems at the wedding, issues during graduation, and now this whole mess about the name. However, it's important to note that Opie wasn't perfect either. From what we've seen, he handled things pretty well, all things considered. It reached a point where he just couldn't keep quiet any longer. Update. Christmas has already passed, and for those who are curious, here's what happened next. A lot of people thought that it was time for Mia to deal with the outcome of her past actions. Some might wonder if Mia deserved to be alone on Christmas. I couldn't bear the thought of her being by herself, feeling sad, especially when I had the power to change that. So I tried calling her but ended up leaving a voicemail. I wasn't sure what her holiday plans were, but I wanted her to know she was always welcome to join us. I thought that would be the end of it and planned to tell Lily that at least I made an attempt. However, to my surprise, Mia called me back on Saturday. She sounded really low. She shared that her kids would be spending Christmas and New Year's out of state, and she felt very isolated. I reassured her that she was always welcome to spend the holidays with her brother, sister, and me. Mia liked the idea and agreed to come over. So Mia, Lily, and Lily's fiancé, John, joined me for Christmas Eve. Turned out to be a wonderful time. Mia was incredibly kind to everyone. Looking back, my initial post might not have given her enough credit. Mia has a huge heart. She was a bit nervous at first but relaxed more as the evening went on. We decided to watch A Muppet Christmas Carol, bringing back memories of past Christmases when my kids were little. After talking to Mia, I dug up the old Christmas stockings for Alex, Lily, and Mia. Even though there wasn't much time, I managed to fill Mia's stocking with some candy, a book, and a couple of gift cards, and did the same for Lily and John. For Christmas morning, they were all surprised to find their stockings filled and teased me for not letting them know, so they could have prepared a stocking for me too. I played it off, saying Santa's work isn't to be questioned, hinting that complaining about Santa might leave you with nothing, just like what happened to me. Alex and his family came over the next day. Mia, being very active on social media, seems to know more about Alex's kids than even I do. The presents Mia picked out were thoughtful for everyone except John, which shows how much she cares. Mia, being a teacher, has a natural way with children, and Alex's kids love spending time with their Aunt Mia. Lily took charge of making our Christmas dinner, and watching her and Mia laughing together in the kitchen brought back memories of a Christmas years ago. Back then, Lily was around 7 or 8. Mia had come home from college, and they, along with Eleanor, were all busy cooking together. It was a heartwarming reminder of family traditions and the joy of spending holidays together. During a cozy Christmas gathering, Lily was perched on a chair while Mia, her older sister, passed down our cherished family recipes to her. Lily looked up to Mia with that special admiration young children reserve for adults who aren't their parents. Mia was incredibly patient and gentle with her, teaching her with kindness. This scene reminded me of the times when Eleanor, Mia, and Lily would playfully tell me that as a boy, my job was to set the table. Watching the two sisters together brought back memories of Eleanor and I found myself needing a moment alone to gather my thoughts. Alex came to find me in my office, mentioning that Mia had told him about my call to her. He admitted he was relieved I had made the call, as he doubted he could have done it himself. I responded half-jokingly that he would have made the call if it involved his own child. This wraps up the family part of our Christmas. The core update, however, revolves around my conversation with Mia after the festivities wound down and everyone had left. Alex and his family returning home for the kids to play with their new toys, and Lily and John heading out for a late Christmas meal with John's family. I had a moment with Lily where she wished me a Merry Christmas, which was very touching. Then, noticing Mia's apprehensive look, I braced myself for a serious talk. Once we were alone, Mia opened up to me. She expressed her gratitude for being included in our Christmas celebration. She shared her experiences of dating after her divorce, particularly the challenges of meeting men who were hesitant about blending families with older children. Many of these men, she found, were comfortable with their co-parenting arrangements and saw no need to complicate matters, especially since their kids were nearing adulthood. Mia's ex-husband prioritizing his career over family time was a significant strain on their marriage. Mia longed for a partner who would demonstrate to her children, especially her son, that family matters are not just a woman's concern. She recounted a pivotal argument with a former boyfriend, paraphrasing for me. She had challenged him to step up as a father figure, citing my example of stepping into her life without having any children of my own. The boyfriend retorted, highlighting how poorly she treated me and how her children mimicked that disrespect. This confrontation sparked a period of reflection for Mia about our relationship and all that we had been through together, acknowledging the efforts I had made for her and her siblings. Mia shared with me that she felt very embarrassed and ashamed about the past. She didn't know where to begin to make things right and was worried that Alex, Lily, and I were angry with her. She asked if it was possible for us to have a relationship similar to the one I have with Lily and Alex. I explained that I couldn't offer her an exact copy of my relationship with Lily, and we can't change what has already happened. I reminded her of a time in the park when I promised to be there for her in ways her dad couldn't be, saying I'm still willing to be as much of a dad to her as she wants me to be. By this time, Mia was in tears, and as I comforted her, her apologies turned into heartfelt sobs. She repeatedly said she was sorry, eventually calling me Dad through her tears. This was a moment I had long hoped for, hearing her call me Dad and expressing her regrets. The following day, things seemed to go back to normal with me being Sam, but there were moments she called me Dad and even Daddy a few times. It's uncertain how things will unfold, but it's a start. We also discussed her mother's funeral arrangement. Mia explained that choosing the prepaid plot wasn't meant to be secretive. It was a practical decision that allowed them to afford an encasement which could one day include my remains alongside my wife's. Additionally, she mentioned a headstone that could incorporate both my and my wife's names. Mia also brought up an issue from the funeral. Her youngest child felt jealous seeing Alex's oldest call me Grandpa, thinking it meant I favored Alex's child over him. She promised to address this misunderstanding with her children, referring to me as Grandpa Sam. Throughout our conversation, Mia didn't blame her behavior on her father's family or any external influences. She acknowledged her own fears and regrets, wishing she had acted differently in the past. Many people doubt whether true change is possible for Mia, and while change is difficult, this holiday season brought us closer, even if things revert back to how they were. This Christmas gave me a precious memory of Mia wanting me to be her dad. Mia has given her consent for me to share this update, showing her openness to mend our relationship. Is this how the chapter with Mia closes? Not entirely, since your journey together is far from over. Now on to the next story. Story 3. I refused to let my bully half-sister be my bridesmaid, so she showed up drunk in a white dress to ruin my wedding. But my dad finally stood up for me after 25 years and is now getting divorced. I, 30F, am getting married to my fiancé, Alex, 32M, in a few months, and I'm beyond excited. However, family drama is threatening to overshadow what should be the happiest time of my life. To understand the situation, I need to provide some backstory. My mom died in a car accident when I was 3. I don't remember much about her, but I have a few cherished photos and my dad's stories. Dad, 58M, was devastated and threw himself into work to cope. For 2 years, it was just the two of us, with my grandparents helping out when they could. When I was 5, Dad met Sarah, 55F, at a work conference. They hit it off immediately, and within 6 months, they were married. I was the flower girl at their wedding. I remember being excited about having a new mom, but also confused and a little scared. Sarah seemed nice at first. She'd read me bedtime stories and take me to the park. But things changed when I was 6 and Sarah gave birth to my half-sister, Lily. From that moment on, it was like a switch flipped. Sarah's attention became solely focused on Lily, and I was pushed to the sidelines. As Lily grew, it became clear that she was the favorite. Sarah would gush over every little thing Lily did, while my achievements were met with indifference. When Lily started school, Sarah volunteered for every event and chaperoned every field trip. She had never done that for me. The favoritism extended to material things, too. Lily always got new clothes and toys, while I got hand-me-downs or was told we couldn't afford things I wanted. Once, when I was 10, I asked for a new bike for my birthday. Dad said we'd see, but then Lily threw a tantrum in a store about wanting a dollhouse. Sarah bought it for her on the spot. I didn't get the bike. As we got older, Lily's behavior towards me worsened. She'd constantly borrow my things without asking and return them damaged, if at all. When I was 12, I got my first makeup set from a friend for my birthday. A week later, I found Lily, then 6, had used all the eyeshadows to paint her dolls. When I complained to Sarah, she said I should have kept it out of Lily's reach and that I needed to share with my sister. The incidents continued. My homework would mysteriously go missing right before it was due. My favorite sweater ended up with bleach stains. My journal disappeared, only to reappear weeks later with pages torn out. Each time, Lily had an excuse and Sarah always believed her. My dad would look uncomfortable but never said anything. One particularly painful memory stands out. When I was 16, I worked all summer at a local ice cream shop to save up for a silver locket I'd been eyeing. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was the first expensive thing I'd bought with my own money. A week after I bought it, it vanished from my jewelry box. I knew Lily took it, but she denied it. Sarah accused me of being irresponsible and losing it. My dad suggested maybe I'd misplaced it. 2 months later, I saw Lily wearing my locket at a family dinner. When I confronted her, she smirked and said, "Prove it's yours." Sarah yelled at me for accusing my sister of theft. My dad just looked uncomfortable and changed the subject. I cried myself to sleep that night. For my 18th birthday, my grandparents gave me a car. It wasn't new, but it was mine. Lily, then 12, threw a massive tantrum about how unfair it was that I got a car and she didn't. Sarah tried to convince my grandparents to sell the car and split the money between Lily and me to be fair. Thankfully, they refused. 2 weeks later, I found my car with a huge dent and scratch down the side. Lily swore she didn't do it and Sarah believed her. My dad suggested I must have hit something and forgotten. I knew it was Lily, but I had no proof. I had to use my college savings to pay for the repairs. When I left for college, it was such a relief to be away from them. I limited contact as much as possible, only coming home for major holidays. Even then, every visit was marred by something going missing or getting damaged. Sarah would accuse me of being careless or forgetful. My dad would try to keep the peace by changing the subject. After graduation, I moved across the country for work. I only see my family once or twice a year now. Lily calls occasionally, usually to brag about her life or ask for money. Last year, she called to tell me she'd gotten into law school and expected me to pay her tuition because that's what big sisters do. When I refused, she called me selfish and said I was jealous of her success. Sarah texts to guilt me about not visiting more often. She'll say things like, "Your sister misses you," or "Your father is getting older, you know." But when I do visit, she spends the whole time praising Lily and criticizing my life choices. My dad emails generic updates about extended family but rarely asks about my life. Last year, I met Alex through a mutual friend. He's incredible, kind, supportive, and makes me feel valued. For the first time, I felt truly loved and appreciated. When he proposed 6 months ago, I was overjoyed. We're planning a small wedding with just close friends and family. Here's where the current drama starts. Lily called last week demanding to be my maid of honor. I was shocked. We're not close at all. I told her I'd already asked my best friend, Emma, who's been there for me through everything. Lily threw a fit, saying as my sister, she had the right to be maid of honor. She accused me of trying to exclude her from the wedding. I stood firm and said no. Lily must have complained to Sarah, because Sarah called me the next day. She berated me for excluding Lily and insisted I make her my maid of honor. She said Lily was heartbroken and that I was being cruel. When I refused, Sarah threatened to boycott the wedding. I told her that was her choice. My dad emailed, urging me to keep the peace by letting Lily be a bridesmaid. He said it would mean a lot to Sarah and that it's just one day. I'm furious that, once again, my dad is prioritizing Sarah and Lily's feelings over mine. I don't want Lily in my bridal party at all. She's never been a sister to me, just a bully. I know she'll find some way to ruin things if I let her be involved. But now Sarah is threatening not to come, and my dad is guilt-tripping me about tearing the family apart. Alex says he'll support whatever decision I make, but he's angry on my behalf. He thinks I should stand my ground and not let them manipulate me. Emma and my other friends are encouraging me to do what makes me happy. Part of me wants to give in just to avoid the drama, but another part of me is tired of always sacrificing my happiness for Lily and Sarah. This is supposed to be my special day, and I don't want to spend it walking on eggshells around Lily. Am I the a-hole for refusing to let Lily be my bridesmaid? Should I give in to keep the peace or stand my ground? I feel like I'm going crazy, and any advice would be appreciated. Date 1. Wow, I didn't expect this post to blow up like it did. Thank you all for your supportive comments and advice. I've read every single one, and they've given me a lot to think about. Here's what's happened since my original post. I showed Alex all your comments. He was even more furious on my behalf after reading about similar experiences others have had. He said he 100% supports whatever decision I make, but he thinks I shouldn't let Lily anywhere near our wedding. We talked it over for hours, and I finally decided to stand firm. Lily will not be a bridesmaid. With Alex's encouragement, I called my dad. I told him my decision was final and explained why. I went into detail about Lily's bullying over the years and how hurt I was that he never stood up for me. I told him about the locket incident, the car, and countless other times when Lily had ruined things for me. I also explained how Sarah's favoritism had made me feel unwanted in my own family. To my shock, my dad broke down crying. He admitted he knew Lily had stolen and damaged my things over the years. He said he was too much of a coward to confront Sarah about it because he was afraid she'd leave him. He confessed that after losing my mom, he was terrified of being alone again. So he let Sarah and Lily get away with everything. He apologized for failing me as a father and said he understood if I couldn't forgive him. While I appreciate his apology, it doesn't erase years of hurt. I told him I forgive him, but our relationship will never be the same. He asked what he could do to make amends. I said he could start by standing up to Sarah and Lily. Now, to his credit, my dad stepped up. He called Sarah and told her that if she boycotts the wedding, he won't attend either. He said he's tired of pretending everything is okay when it's not. Sarah apparently threw a massive fit. She accused him of choosing me over his real family and said he was betraying Lily. My dad stood his ground and said I was his daughter too, and he was done ignoring how I'd been treated. This led to a huge argument between them. Sarah demanded that my dad make me change my mind. When he refused, she threatened to leave him. My dad, for the first time ever, didn't back down. He told Sarah that if she and Lily couldn't respect his daughter, maybe they should rethink their living situation. Lily then called me, alternating between crying and screaming. She swore she'd changed and begged me to reconsider. She said she'd always looked up to me and just wanted to be close to her big sister. When I pointed out that her actions over the years said otherwise, she got angry. She accused me of being jealous of her and said I was trying to punish her for being Dad's favorite. When I refused to change my mind, she threatened to show up at the wedding anyway and make a scene. I calmly told her that if she does, she'll be escorted out by security. After I hung up, Lily started posting nasty things about me on social media. She accused me of being a jealous, spiteful person who was trying to tear the family apart. She claimed I'd always been mean to her and that I was lying about her behavior. Several relatives commented in support of her, saying I was being cruel to my little sister and that family should come first. I was upset at first, But Alex pointed out that Lily was just showing her true colors to everyone. He suggested I post my side of the story. I was hesitant, but after thinking about it, I decided to do it. I made a long post detailing Lily's bullying over the years with specific examples. I included photos of some of the things she damaged, including my car. I explained about the locket and other stolen items. I wrote about Sarah's favoritism and how it had affected me growing up. I ended by saying that I was tired of being the family scapegoat and doormat and that I deserved to have a wedding day free from drama and stress. The response was overwhelming. Many relatives reached out to apologize, saying they had no idea what I'd been through. Several of Lily's friends messaged me privately to say Lily had bragged about stealing my things or framing me for things she'd done. A cousin I haven't spoken to in years called me to say she'd witnessed Lily's behavior at family gatherings but had been afraid to speak up. Sarah is still insisting I'm exaggerating and need to get over the past. She's been calling my dad constantly, alternating between crying and yelling, but my dad is standing firm. He told Sarah that if she and Lily can't respect his daughter, maybe they should rethink their living situation. As for the wedding, plans are moving forward. Emma and my other bridesmaids have been incredibly supportive. They've offered to run interference if Lily tries to show up uninvited. Alex and I are also considering hiring security, just in case. I'm still processing everything that's happened. While part of me is glad the truth is finally out, another part is mourning the family I wished I had. But I'm more certain than ever that keeping Lily out of my wedding is the right choice. I deserve to have a day that's about celebrating my love with Alex, not managing my sister's drama. Thank you all again for your support and advice. It's given me the strength to stand up for myself. I'll update again if anything significant happens. Update 2. Things have escalated quickly since my last update. Here's what's happened. My dad moved out of the house he shared with Sarah and Lily. He said he needed time to think about their relationship and his priorities. He's staying with my uncle for now. This is the first time in 25 years that he stood up to Sarah, and I can tell it's hard for him. He calls me every day, sometimes just to talk about random things like we used to when I was little. Sarah is furious about Dad leaving. She's been calling and texting him nonstop, alternating between begging him to come home and threatening divorce. She's accused him of abandoning his family and choosing me over Lily. When he stopped responding to her messages, she started leaving nasty voicemails for me, blaming me for destroying her marriage and poisoning my dad against them. Lily's behavior has gotten worse. Last week, she showed up at my apartment unannounced, clearly drunk. She alternated between sobbing apologies and screaming insults. She said she hated me for turning Dad against her and ruining her perfect family. When I refused to let her in, she tried to force her way past me. She was yelling about how she'd always been better than me and how it wasn't fair that I was stealing Dad. Thankfully, my neighbor heard the commotion and came to help. Lily left, but not before threatening to ruin my special day. I filed a police report about Lily's behavior and got a restraining order against her. I also hired extra security for the wedding just in case. Alex has been amazing through all of this. He's taken time off work to be with me and has been handling a lot of the wedding details so I can deal with the family drama. To my surprise, several of my aunts and cousins have rallied around me. They've been helping with wedding preparations and offering emotional support. My Aunt Jane, Dad's sister, even offered to walk me down the aisle if my dad doesn't come. She told me she always suspected something was off with how Sarah and Lily treated me, but she didn't want to interfere. She apologized for not speaking up sooner. Speaking of my dad, he called yesterday. He said he's been doing a lot of thinking and realizes how much he failed me growing up. He asked if he could still walk me down the aisle. He said he'd understand if I said no, but he hopes I'll give him a chance to start making things right. I told him I'd think about it. I'm torn about my dad. On one hand, I'm glad he's finally standing up for me. On the other, it's hard to forget all the times he didn't. Alex says it's up to me, but he thinks my dad is genuinely trying to make amends. He pointed out that Dad is risking his marriage to support me. Now, the wedding is in 2 weeks. Despite all the drama, I'm excited to marry Alex. He's been my rock through all of this. Whatever happens with my family, I know I'll have a wonderful husband by my side. I'm still anxious about what Lily might do, even with the restraining order. I'm worried she'll try something, but I'm trying to focus on the positive. I have Alex, supportive friends, and family members who are finally seeing the truth. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm not alone in this. Update 3. The wedding was yesterday, and it was beautiful, despite some last-minute drama. 2 days before the wedding, Sarah showed up at my apartment. She was crying and begging me to let Lily be a bridesmaid. She said Lily was devastated about being excluded and that I was breaking her heart. When I stood firm, Sarah's tone changed. She started guilt-tripping me, saying I was tearing the family apart and that I'd regret this when I'm older. I told Sarah to leave. As Sarah was leaving, she said something that shocked me. She admitted that she had encouraged Lily's behavior towards me growing up. She was jealous of the bond one had with my dad and wanted to drive a wedge between us. She said she regretted it now, but it was too late for me to forgive her. I was stunned. I always suspected Sarah resented me, but hearing her admit it was overwhelming. I told my dad about Sarah's confession. He was furious and said this was the last straw. He's filing for divorce. He apologized again for not protecting me and promised to do better going forward. On the wedding day, everything went smoothly until the ceremony started. I had decided to let my dad walk me down the aisle. As we were walking, I heard a commotion at the back of the venue. Lily had shown up drunk and wearing a white dress. She was screaming about how I'd stolen her family and that she was the real bride. Thankfully, the security team quickly and quietly moved her before she could ruin the ceremony. Most of our guests didn't even realize what had happened. My dad squeezed my hand reassuringly as we continued down the aisle. I was shaken, but seeing Alex's loving smile at the altar helped calm me down. The rest of the wedding was perfect. Alex and I exchanged our vows, surrounded by people who truly love and support us. During the reception, my dad gave a heartfelt speech. He apologized publicly for his past mistakes and promised to be a better father and grandfather in the future. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Emma, my maid of honor, gave a touching speech about our friendship. She talked about how she'd seen me grow stronger over the years and how happy she was that I'd found someone who truly appreciated me. Alex's best man had everyone laughing with stories from their college days. The party went on late into the night. I danced with my dad, laughed with my friends, and felt truly happy and loved. It was everything I dreamed of and more. This morning, I woke up to missed calls from Sarah and several angry texts from Lily. I decided not to read them. I'm done letting them control my emotions. I've blocked their numbers and social media accounts. My dad says he'll handle any necessary communication with them regarding the divorce. Alex and I are leaving for our honeymoon tomorrow. We're going to a beach resort where we can relax and enjoy being newlyweds. I'm looking forward to starting this new chapter of my life with a husband who loves me and a newfound sense of self-worth. I know there will probably be more family drama in the future, especially with the divorce proceedings, but for now, I'm choosing to focus on the positive. I have a wonderful husband, supportive friends, and a dad who's finally stepping up. For the first time in my life, I feel truly happy and at peace. Thank you all for your support throughout this journey. Your advice and encouragement gave me the strength to stand up for myself and have the wedding I deserved. I'm grateful for this community and the kindness you've shown me. Now on to the next story. Story 4. I dramatically reduced my work hours to fully take on all household chores and childcare duties for my sons and wife. My wife is usually an angel of a woman but has recently gotten into a friendship with a woman whom I personally believe is a bad influence on her. Not in a patronizing way, more of a lay down with dogs, get up with fleas type of situation. I never said anything about her childishness or her very radical behavior because, frankly, it doesn't affect me, until it did. A few months ago, my wife began pressuring me to do more around the house. We already split chores and childcare. Admittedly, she had a bigger cut than I, but I do most of the cooking, breakfasts and dinners. Lunch is her responsibility for her and the boys. I take out the garbage and do laundry, and I deep clean the bathrooms once a week. I also help with our boys' homework and such. She insists that I am not doing enough and that I should be doing more around the house. I tried having discussions with her, asking what she expected from me, namely all chores and child rearing should be my duty, it seems, and for months it seemed to be going nowhere. She used the EF word more than once when speaking on this, which felt manipulative. It boiled over when we were out with friends one night, and she began talking about how I never helped out and how I use her as a house slave. Her words, "I will admit I saw red." This next part is where I may be the a-hole. I didn't say anything that night, but the next day I asked my boss to be given reduced hours for the next little bit due to stress, and I took over everything in the house. I cooked breakfast and made lunch for the boys before I drove them to school. I cleaned the house top to bottom. I did every dish we had twice and so on. My wife was blindingly happy and bragged to her friend that she finally had me worn in. She didn't lift a finger for around a month. Then she began asking why we never went on dates anymore and complaining that she wanted to get her nails done as they were growing in. I explained that I had to take that out of our budget so we could continue to afford everything else, but we could absolutely have a movie night in, and I could paint her nails for her. She was unhappy with that solution, so I asked her if she would want to get a part-time job to pay for either luxuries. You would have thought I asked if she wanted to join a cult. She then asked if I could just pick up more shifts at work to cover her other expenses and used the phrase "be a man," which I found more than a little insulting. I then asked her if she would be willing to go back to splitting the chores and such, which is when she began to catch on that the two were related. She yelled at me that I was being manipulative for doing this. I stood strong for a while, but now I am questioning my methods because even I feel what I did was a bit underhanded. Update 1. How do I, 38M, explain to or help my sons understand their mother, 30F, is going to rehab? I have never been in a situation like this. I am a former addict myself, but I didn't have children then. See my last post for more clarification, but the gist of it is that my wife and I recently had a blowout argument where she admitted to using 2 substances for several months and has agreed to get checked into rehab, which we are currently setting up now. How the hell do I bring this up to them without them being judgmental or hateful to their mother or worse, falling into the same mental space I am in? I don't want to lie to them, which is what my wife wants, but I am failing to see an alternative that won't destroy them or the respect they have for their mother. I am swimming blind here and have barely slept since this all came out. Any and all advice is appreciated. Thank you in advance. Update 2. I yelled at my wife. See my profile for details, but I was driving my wife to the rehabilitation center we decided on. On the way, she was screaming at me about how she can't believe I'm humiliating her like this, explaining what was happening to the boys and making her message her dealer friend that they would not be hanging out or using together anymore, about how she doesn't want to go, and that I am a controlling monster and how threatening her with divorce and taking primary custody of the boys was too far and I was insane. And I just took it and took it and took it until I just couldn't, and I screamed at her. I screamed that the woman I met would have rather died than had a pillhead junkie around her sons and how she disgusted me and that I don't know if she knew how much I was considering leaving her. Not because of the addiction but the way she was acting like she hadn't brought drugs into our home around me, a former addict myself and around our boys, that I am beginning to hate her for doing that she was becoming exactly what she always cried about her mother being, and that she was lucky I was here to see it before what happened to her goddamn sons. It makes me sick to say, but watching it sink in and just how far she had spiraled felt good. Watching her realize that her actions have consequences was nice. She yelled a few more times that I was abusive or whatever, but she was still crying, so I felt her heart wasn't in it. I plan on speaking to a lawyer. I don't want to divorce her, but I don't know how healthy our relationship could possibly be after this. I know yelling like that was wrong, but I don't feel bad, and that is the part that makes me think that maybe I shouldn't be married to her anymore, for her sake and my own. I don't know what else to do, and I'm so pissed that she detonated C4 in every bit of our life. Update 3. She was cheating. Before you read, please know this is event post. I normally would never be like this, but I am beyond okay and need to get this poison out of my head before I go anywhere else with it. She was cheating. The drug-dealing friend sent me videos of her dancing and grinding on this ugly, hick-looking bastard. I am goddamn destroyed. The boys are staying with my mother for a few days, and I'm taking the next week off work. I am so done. I have never been so angry in my goddamned life. She was so goddamn smug. Sending it in case you don't realize you're replaceable to her. Well, the free ride stops here. I hope she can get on Medicaid for her Suboxone LMFAO. I'm done. I saved the video immediately, and I'm going to see a lawyer ASAP. I can't tell anyone yet because I want to do this right. Thankful as my parents insisted on a prenup with what I at the time thought was an inhumane cheating clause. Never been cheated on before, and I feel like tearing my goddamned hair out. I genuinely never thought she would turn out to be such a scummy piece of shit. I cannot handle this. I am not physically able to handle this. I haven't been able to keep food down, and I drank for the first time in over a decade last night. Then I woke up and had to pour the rest down the drain because I am about to spiral, and my boys don't need both mom and dad in rehab right now. I am so close to losing my goddamned mind. Also, believe or leave what you want, but stop sending me private messages about how I should take down the posts or that posting about my personal relationship with my wife is wrong. Please leave me be. It will not work. This is the only place I can talk about this. Update 4. My soon-to-be ex-wife is in the hospital after a suicide attempt, and I feel like a monster. I've been working on filing for divorce while she's in rehab, not just for the cheating but because with that on top of everything else and myself nearly sinking back into my own addiction due to the stress of the situation, I couldn't stand to even think of anymore, and there's no healthy relationship that has room for that mindset. I honestly didn't want to be in a room with her again to try mediation or counseling due to the fact that the last time I was alone with her, I raised my voice, and at the time even felt she deserved it. I, of course, now know that me doing it was terrible and could be considered abuse. Yet another reason I should not be in a relationship with this woman. I moved all of her belongings to our guest room, minus the pills I found hidden in her bedside table. I took pictures of those in their hiding spot, then flushed them. I also removed her from my bank account and credit cards. I spoke to my boys, explaining the situation without demonizing their mother to the best of my ability, and they seemed to understand. I have no intention of abandoning them. Blood or not, they were my sons. Then she came home. The boys were and still are away at camp, a birthday present paid for by my mother. She was quiet, eyes on the ground, after the moment I picked her up at the facility all the way home. Once we got home, I led her to the guest room silently, and she didn't take it well, crying before she could even take the first step. Throughout the next couple of weeks, I let her get settled, and though I stayed carefully neutral, I know she could tell something was coming, but I wanted to be as fair as possible and try to let her get used to being out before I said anything, as that was one thing I myself hated about when I left rehab. Everything was flying at me so fast I didn't have time to breathe. Finally, I asked her to sit on the couch, and I began explaining to her that I do not believe I can continue being married to her and that I want a divorce. I should have known her reaction was all wrong. She didn't say anything at all. She only nodded and cried quietly as I spoke. I explained that I did not intend to hurt her, but I could not be married to her anymore and that maybe both of us should focus on being the best parents we can be. I told her I had no intentions of kicking her out and that because of our prenup, the divorce should be cut and dry and she should be safe to begin looking for employment now, and once she has a job, I will help her find an apartment. At this, she stood and walked to her room. I let her because I thought she must have been overwhelmed, and this talk could wait. She didn't come out at dinner time, and I weighed whether I should leave her alone or not. Eventually, I decided to knock on the door and ask if she was hungry. Long story short, she had smuggled pills into my house somehow, or she had a stash I was unaware of, and had an overdose and was dead for several minutes. In the ambulance, and she's in a medically induced coma because the doctors aren't sure exactly how much damage she's done to her brain from what they've said. I feel like an absolute monster, like I am the scum of the earth, like I should have just said nothing, like I should have just dealt with it, just held it in and stayed. I am responsible for this, and it kills me. I may not have the same for her as I did, but I do feel so very sorry for everything she's been through. It's killing me. I haven't told my sons yet, and I am debating waiting until they're back from camp so they can have a little more time without this on their minds on top of everything else. I am sorry for the grammar and such. I don't have the energy to edit this but wanted to get this off my chest. Now on to the next story. Story 5. This story takes place almost 12 years ago, so I'll do my best with the dialogue and details, but admittedly, some things are a little fuzzy. Most of my life, I've had a problem with picking men that were not good for me, so much so that I even had a phrase for it. Saving the world one at a time. One of my more spectacularly bad choices was a guy by the name of Bob. Obviously not his real name. I met Bob when I was working one of my 2 jobs at the local mall. He worked somewhere else in the mall, so we hit it off, and soon enough we were in a relationship. Within a few months, my lease was up and we ended up moving in together, which obviously in hindsight was a huge mistake, but I was dumb and lonely. Soon enough, red flags began to fly. He would say things in common conversations that were simply incorrect, like, "There's only 4 continents, and the rest are actually owned by the Morrison government and thus don't count," etc. And when challenged, would circular talk until you either agreed with him or dropped the subject. He would also make claims that seemed entirely unbelievable, such as when I asked where he had been staying prior to his mom's house, he said he camped in the woods. When I asked how he did that for months on end and without any gear, he simply gestured to himself and said, "This is all the gear I need." The worst trait, though, by far, was his epic laziness. I have never witnessed someone so lazy in my life. Bob was unemployed for over a third of our relationship and would simply sit in the apartment watching Netflix or playing some war games on his computer, aka my spare computer, typing away in the group chat. He would never clean up after himself, leaving dirty dishes in the sink and filth on every surface, while taking a shower maybe once a week. The smell that permeated my apartment could only be described as revolting and could easily gag a maggot. I would inquire a few times a week on his job hunt, only to be dismissed or given a growing amount of excuses, such as, "But I don't have a car, how would I get there? The boss doesn't run in that area. The internet went down so I couldn't apply," etc., etc. Meanwhile, I'm working double and triple shifts at my job to try to make up the lost income and running him all over town in my off time, getting applications and helping him fill them out and turn them in. Keep in mind, he doesn't have a cell phone, so all of these apps have my contact info on them. Thus begins the era of him holding my phone while I'm at work so he can make calls or schedule interviews, and also I can't get a hold of him from my store phone if I needed to. Things begin getting weird. He began staying up later and later on this group chat, sometimes still almost. Sometimes he would hang out all evening until it was time for bed. Then he would always make some excuse on why he needed to check the game before bed, and he'd be right there. Hours would pass. No Bob. I began to get suspicious, but nothing incriminating seemed to be taking place, so I just shrugged it off as being insecure. Then he started asking to use my card to go see his best friend, Ben. Now, I wasn't super comfortable with this, but I did know Ben pretty well, and we got along almost better than Bob and I did, so I guess to a degree I trusted Ben more than Bob and agreed to it. This happened a few times while I was working the evening shift, and he was always back at the allotted time with my car and my phone and relatively grateful for the opportunity to hang out with his buds. Suspicious, yes, but I'm the kind of person that is loyal and trusting to a fault and don't assume anything without proof, and from every angle all seemed to be on the up and up, so I took it at face value. So one day he asked to borrow my car and go with his friends to a card gaming tournament. He put on a great show, telling me how the prize money would help us out, and with the deck he had, there was no way he could lose. I just had to let him use my car and phone this one last time, and he would be able to buy himself a phone with the prize money. I wasn't a huge fan of the idea, but nothing untoward had occurred in the previous instances, and I didn't feel like spending my only day off at a card game convention that I literally couldn't care less about, so I acquiesced. I bought myself a couple of green monsters and some vodka and had my own little personal drunk party. Hours ticked by and no Bob. Eventually, I passed out, only to wake up at the crack of dawn violently sick. This went way beyond a hangover. I started retching in the bathroom until there was nothing left but bile. But the retching wouldn't stop. Hours ticked by, and I lay on my bathroom floor sweating and convulsing, with no phone, no car, and no Bob. I eventually was able to crawl to my room and wrap myself in a bathrobe before crawling down my apartment building stairs and began knocking on the closest doors. It took 3 apartments before someone opened the door and allowed me to use their phone to call my mom. My mother was at my apartment in 6 minutes flat and rushed me to the ER, where I was diagnosed with an aggressive and antibiotic-resistant strain of food poisoning. Bob finally showed up later that afternoon, a phone and car keys in hand, looking very concerned and claiming to be deeply apologetic, but my mom hated him from that point on. I was out of the hospital and back to work within a few days, but it was the beginning of the end. During these last months, we were constantly scraping by due to his lack of consistent income and poor spending habits. There were jobs gotten and there were jobs lost for various reasons throughout our relationship, but the final job was the one I helped him get. Literally 3 buildings down from my own workplace. This company rents furniture and electronics on a weekly or monthly basis, and I happen to know most of the employees and the hiring manager as they are regular customers at my coffee establishment. I was able to use what little sway I had to get him on there, and he accepted a job as a delivery man. Within a few weeks, I come home from work to find a brand new TV, an entertainment system, and him grinning like an idiot. I tell him we can't afford this. We can barely afford to eat, and our survival ring of scraps I bring home from work. He talks about his amazing employee discount and assures me it's no big deal that the rental fee will just come out of his paycheck, etc. I was pissed. Not only had he not consulted me, he also had me on the account as well. My info had been taken from the credit application I filled out as a favor to help their numbers. So if he flaked, I was liable. Fast forward another few weeks. The rent is late, and we're receiving eviction notices on our door. I come home from work, and the TV is mysteriously gone. Thank goodness, I think. He finally realized we can't afford it and took it back. He gets paid. Rent gets paid, and all is as good as it can be until I found a pawn slip for the TV in his pocket as I was doing laundry and went ballistic. He assured me he had plans to get it back in the works and to not worry about it. It'll be taken care of soon and no one will be the wiser. I was too pissed to catch on to the secrecy aspect of the situation. A few more tense weeks go by with him working mornings and myself working evenings while we shared one phone and a car until that fateful day arrived. I woke up that morning with a migraine headache and opted to let Bob take the car but leave me the phone so I can call someone later on for a ride to work. A few hours of uncomfortable sleep go by before I'm awakened by my phone. I answer the phone, still groggy. Hello? There is a long pause on the other end of the line until a female voice asks, "Is Bob there?" I felt a sickening feeling in my gut and began to shake. Is this real? Am I dreaming? No, he's at work right now, but this is his wife. Total lie? But hey, is there something I can help you with? I wasn't rude. I phrased it as a genuine question rather than an accusation. Another long pause before she began to stammer about maybe she had the wrong number. But it was obvious she just wanted to get off the phone with me as quickly as possible. And I realized in that moment that I desperately needed her. Please, I said with an edge of desperation in my voice. I don't know what's going on, but I just really need somebody to tell me the truth. The last word came out in a sob, and I just sat there for a moment in silence, trying to quell the urge to just cry uncontrollably. Listen, the voice on the other end was almost gentle. I need to make a few phone calls, but I promise you I will call you back. She said it calmly and with so much conviction that I really wanted to believe her. Please, you promise? I almost begged. I promise, she replied. Okay, I took a deep breath and released it. I'll talk to you soon, and hung up. I then proceeded to aggressively pace my living room floor, staring at my phone while chain-smoking and muttering to myself like a crazy person. I knew who she was calling. I was replaying all those little red flag moments in my head from the last few months, pinning down dates of behavior I'd found suspect, when the phone rings again. It's her. I froze for a moment, shocked she followed through and called me back, terrified of what this meant. I answered the phone, and what followed was about the most soul-crushing 45 minutes of my life. After initial introductions, June, again not the real name, and I began comparing stories and it became glaringly obvious what was happening. They had actually been in a relationship several years prior and had run back into each other on the aforementioned war game, where they began to flirt on group chat. All those nights he'd been on the computer, he'd been chatting with her. All those times he'd go hang out with his friends, he'd been using my car to take her out and my phone to communicate with her. The time I was sick and alone with no resources, you guessed it, he was with her. Oh, but it gets better. Do you have a little silver hummingbird necklace? She inquired. Yes, my mother gave it to me for my 27th birthday, actually. I love it. Really? 'Cause he gave me one for Mother's Day. Oh, OMG. I almost yelled into the phone as I ran to my room and tore through my jewelry box. It wasn't in there. It was around her neck. From there, we discovered not only had he been giving her my property as gifts, but he'd had her over to our apartment, passing it off as his own. I didn't want to believe him capable of doing something so cruel and disrespectful when I'd allowed him to sponge off me for the better part of 3 years. Unfortunately, as confirmation, she began describing my apartment to a T all the way down to my bedsheets. June said he even pulled my secret box from beneath my bed and offered to use my adult items on her. She said she found it weird and didn't partake, but I threw them away due to the sheer ick factor. Finally, she uttered the words I didn't know I wanted to hear. You know what we should do? We should bust him together. My mind immediately started racing. Indeed, we should. I was a mix of fury, adrenaline, and despair, so my thinking wasn't exactly straight, and details begin to get hazy here. We arranged to meet up at work and to find a way to lure Bob over there, but unfortunately, she lived about 40 minutes away, whereas I only live about 6 miles from our destination, so if I got there first, I needed to stall him, assuming he wasn't out on delivery. I called a trusted coworker of mine at work, sobbing and begging for a ride. To his everlasting credit, he got somebody to cover and left work to come get me and bring me to my car. When I got to Bob's workplace, I went inside to retrieve my keys. This isn't uncommon as they know the car is mine, and was stopped halfway through the door by Bob's manager wanting to talk about the payment due on our account. I don't remember the exact dialogue, but I said something along the lines of, I don't know when you're going to get your payment. I looked utterly defeated and told him we could never afford the TV in the first place and how I had begged Bob to take it back. And now we don't have it anymore as Bob had pawned it and I don't have the money to get it out, let alone pay him. I was full-on blubbering at this point when he stopped me to clarify that his employee pawned a rental TV under contract. I confirmed that this was indeed true and presented him with the pawn ticket. He was mad. Apparently, such an act is illegal and his terms for immediate termination, but he assured me that if I could get the TV back to him, there would be no harm, no foul, and he would terminate my contract without any penalties. I thanked him for his understanding and told him to let Bob know I would be over at my workplace. My heart is pounding in my chest, and blood is roaring in my ears. What was I going to say? What was he going to say? Would June make it here before he did? My heart sinks when I see Bob's hulking form making its way in my direction. I frantically scan the parking lot for June's car. She's not here yet, and I'm out of time. He hits the door, looking out of breath and guilty as heck, and I just stare at him stone-faced. I walk outside silently to light a cigarette, unsure of exactly what to say, and he follows me wordlessly outside. He starts in with the, "It's not what it seems," and "It's all just a terrible misunderstanding," and I just let him dig himself deeper into his hole of lies. I listen. I nod. I pretend to understand until a particular car pulls into view. June parks in the space directly next to where we were standing and gets out of the car. "Hey, Bob, how you doing?" Bob has gone visibly pale. He hangs his head and sits down on the curb, saying nothing to either of us. June and I greet each other and awkwardly shake hands before again turning our attention to Bob. June begins berating him on his lies and deceit, unveiling all of our mutual info and subsequent conclusions, while I stood mostly in silence, agreeing at the appropriate times, but mostly still in shock. After 20 minutes of this, I finally mustered up the courage to take my stand. "We are done. I don't want to see you ever again. I'll pack up your things. Only 2 boxes worth. And your sister can contact me in a few days to pick them up. Now, I want your key." "Not until I get my stuff out." "Then you get your key," he replied. I tried to argue, but he continued to refuse and use his large stature to his advantage, knowing I'd have no chance in a physical altercation. He turned and walked away, heading back to his workplace. June and I talked a little more before she handed me my hummingbird necklace and left. I stood there alone, staring at nothing, trying to wrap my head around what had just transpired, and then I cried. Oh, how I cried. With nowhere else to turn, I had only one call to make, to my mom. The moment she answered, I unleashed this deluge of words at her that were half sobs and half rant. "Stay right there. I'm coming," she said. God bless my mother. Soon enough, both of my parents pulled up in my dad's truck, and my mom gets out to comfort me and give me hugs. I look at the driver's seat and see my father with his jaw clenched in a death grip on the steering wheel while staring straight ahead. Oh, I cried. They take me to the pawn shop, and my parents write me a check for more than $500 to get the TV out and then drive straight over to Bob's workplace and return the TV to the manager. As the manager finishes up the cancellation paperwork, my dad spots Bob pacing around the back of the parking lot, talking frantically on the phone. Unfortunately, I didn't get to hear the ensuing conversation, but my dad returns within a few minutes, holding my house key and looking victorious. "I believe this is yours," he says as he hands me the key and then pulls me into a hug, and I cried a little into his shoulder. My dad gave me a squeeze, kissed my temple, and whispered into my ear, "They're firing him." I leaned back to look at my dad, and he just smirked and said, "Now he's jobless and homeless." I thought about it for a second before I said, in my most sarcastic tone, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that." We laughed about it a little, and my parents gave me some words of wisdom before leaving me to drive myself home, where my best friend was already waiting to keep me company. Bob and his sister showed up a few days later for his pitiful boxes of stuff. He tried to talk to me, to explain, but my best friend descended on him like a harpy if he muttered more than a few syllables in my direction. So he was shut down almost immediately. He left that night, and I have never heard from him since. I blocked him on social media, but there was really no need as he made no effort to contact me on any level. That's Bob. Ever lazy, ever deluded, and always a butthole. So here I am, many years later, happily married to my high school sweetheart and a mother of 2 beautiful little boys, and grateful to have moved on when I did. The experience with Bob certainly took its toll. I lost a lot of weight due to lack of appetite but had a myriad of trust issues moving forward. But the point is, I moved forward. I have grown leaps and bounds as a person since this experience and am truly content with where my life is now. But every now and then, when I'm drifting off to sleep, I can't help but wonder whatever happened to good old Bob. Is he out there somewhere in the woods with a stick in his hand as his only gear, waiting for a Martian government to make its move? Oh well, a girl can dream. Now on to the next story. Story 6. A cheater ends up jobless and homeless. I live in a 10-story apartment building in a dense part of a city with numerous other tall complexes, but also a number of old single-family homes. One such home abuts my building directly under my 8th-floor apartment. The longtime owner has had a pigeon coop in his backyard for years. The birds smell and are a nuisance, but no big deal. Then, about 6 months ago, the owner took it upon himself to dump 20 pounds of birdseed in his backyard daily, attracting 200 to 250 city pigeons. They are ferals that lived in a nearby park, but once the feeding started, they ended up hanging out on my neighbor's roof most of the day, every day. Complaints to him to desist were fruitless. Numerous neighbors also complained to city officials, but they were useless. Animal rights activists on our city council, who halted a pigeon control program a few years back as cruelty to animals, are very pro-animal. They refused to take action under the pretext that there is no sort of nuisance law the city could use in this case. The smell from the pigeon droppings in his yard progressively got worse, and the birds started roosting on our property and dumping on parked cars. Several disgruntled neighbors, including me, pondered a solution for months. A neighbor and I arrived at a solution, artificially escalating the nuisance level of the problem, specifically the bird smell, so the city can no longer ignore the nuisance. It had to be logical, secretive, and calibrated. Someone couldn't throw dog poop onto his property and expect an outcome. Long story short, we concocted an odorous slurry using my 8th-floor balcony directly over the pigeon lover's backyard. I gave it gradually increasing midnight sprinklings of slurry, which disappeared into the grass in his messy backyard. Within 1 week, the increased odor emanating from his property reached half a block away. Suddenly, the problem was resolved. We didn't see the official action, but word was that several prominent businessmen who owned a restaurant down the street complained to the mayor about the stench. The city took action. The guy is now only allowed to keep about 15 pigeons in coops. No more feeding the ferals. An unorthodox solution to a problem that needed to be dealt with. A great solution, but not where I thought the story was going, to be honest. I thought you and your neighbors were going to start sticking your butts over the edge of the balconies and taking a dump on your neighbor's house. They probably also would have been effective, but in a very different way. Now, how many of you are imagining a butt sticking over the balcony and dumping onto the neighbor's house? If so, please hit that like button because it really helps me out. Now on to the next story. Story 7. My ex-wife trying to get me back by using our daughters to convince me doesn't really sound like a big problem, right? Yeah, well, while I wish I could just plain tell her to piss off and never bother me again, there is the matter of us having 2 daughters and sharing custody. So I can't excise her from my life on a permanent basis, not without removing our daughters too. We married fairly early in our lives, back when we were 20, and we had been dating for 3 years before that. Our daughters were born in the very first year of the marriage, and there were some complications which meant my ex-wife would have difficulty conceiving again. Didn't matter to me at the time because I was just glad she made it healthy and fine through the whole ordeal, and that we already had 2 beautiful baby girls to love and raise. The marriage lasted for 9 years. It ended when I divorced her for cheating. I have absolutely no tolerance for it, and I don't believe in forcing myself to suffer needlessly for that, which wasn't my fault to begin with. While this might sound incredulous to some folks, any love I had for my ex-wife was pretty much killed when I found out about her cheating and the details behind it. So yeah, this isn't a threat about me moving on from her. I've done that 7 years ago. Hell, I don't even hate her. I just don't give a damn about what goes on in her life unless it concerns our daughters. The problem is that it's only me that moved on from the whole thing. The ex-wife, her family, and even our daughters have kept trying to get us back together, even though I have made it plain for everyone that I have no interest in ever doing that. Me not dating at first for a few years after the divorce might have been giving them false hope, but I sure as hell wasn't going to jump into another relationship so soon after, not with our daughters to look after. They were my number 1 priority, besides my own issues which stemmed from the ex's cheating. Those issues got resolved with the help of friends, family, and some counseling. So yeah, that's over and done with. I have no issue in communicating with our girls, none whatsoever. Anything else they can understand just fine. There's never been any fighting, no yelling, no nonsensical teenage rebellion thus far, no tantrums thrown, and so on. Pretty great, right? Except this whole thing, they know about her cheating on me, and it was their mother, in fact, who told them about it some 3 years ago or so. I imagine she's been feeding them some kind of narrative since then, and I've asked her countless times to stop with it, that it wasn't helping anyone, that it only prevented them from moving on. But the ex-wife didn't stop. She apparently just got subtler about it. In all the years since we divorced, she hasn't dated or slept with anyone else. While I suppose she thinks that's admirable, I don't, to be honest. I find it kind of insulting. When we were married, she slept with someone else, but now she's just fine going without sex for 7 years. Whatever. Not that it matters. While I could ignore the occasional mentions of their mother, of how well she looks, of them showing me photos they took with her, obviously all decked up for my sake, it's gotten worse lately. Why? Because I have a girlfriend. Clemens isn't the first since the divorce, but she is the most serious relationship I've had since my marriage ended. She also happens to be 8 years my junior. Before getting together as a couple, we knew each other for 4 years through a shared hobby. So basically, it was a gradual transition from being friends to being involved with each other. I can honestly say I love this woman. It was a surprise to me when I realized that because, while I didn't really want to admit it to myself, I was afraid for a time that what my ex-wife did to me damaged me on some fundamental level and rendered me incapable of ever truly loving someone else like I once did her. Initially, my daughters had very little to say about our relationship, much like they didn't comment on the previous 2 I had post-divorce. But then they started coming home ahead of the schedule we set up in advance, and they'd find me and Clemens together. Nothing compromising, not sex or anything of the sort. Then came the grumbling. Then came the "why is she here?" question. Then came the "it's not fair to mom what you're doing," as if I was actually doing this solely to spite or hurt their mother. So I sat them down and talked and I talked and I talked, but they're just not getting it. They simply won't give up on this preposterous fantasy of theirs where I get back with their mother. Clemens, thank God, has been understanding and isn't upset by their behavior. She's basically saying to give them time, but I kind of doubt that will work. It hasn't so far. So I have no idea why more time would change anything. Anyway, since I'm really all out of ideas, I figured I might as well ask you folks here if any one of you might have an idea how to handle this. Is there even a way, an approach of any sort, that could work on my daughters realizing I will not, under any circumstances, get back with their mother? I tried telling them dozens of times that while their mother and I are on good terms, it's only for them and not for us, at least not on my end. It just doesn't seem to be reaching them at all. Like I've said in other responses, I brought up her cheating to explain why I don't want to be with their mother, and they already knew about it, but they keep using the same approach every time, of how she's faithful to me now. When I pointed out to them that she can't be faithful to me given that we're not together to begin with, they just ignore that. Now here's the thing that I think is messing with their minds. They never saw their mother as anything but loving towards me or them, or at least they don't remember it. If they did see her acting coldly and distant with me during her affair, and yes, it was an affair, not just a one-time thing, not that I wouldn't have divorced her either way, she was very much the opposite of loving in the bedroom. They never really saw that, nor should they have. My approaches for intimacy were often rebuffed, and I felt more and more dejected until one day I realized, with the help of a very close and very good friend, that there was nothing wrong with me and therefore something had to be wrong with her, which is what led me to discover the affair. Because I started looking for reasons why our love life had suddenly dropped so much in quality and quantity, and it wasn't just sex. There were the small things missing from our daily lives too. I know it sounds silly, but we always kissed at the front door in plain sight before either of us went to work. That's something that only now, in retrospect, became plain to see that was missing. Bottom line is, their mother denied me even the most basic of affection while giving it to someone else outside of our marriage. To me, that's unforgivable. They don't understand that, they couldn't, not even if I told them, which I'd rather not, and how hurtful it can be when you realize that your spouse didn't really give a damn about you all that much. So all the regret and remorse and pining for us to get back together. To me, it's worthless. What's the point? Where was all this supposed love and guilt and remorse when it should have mattered? They seem to think that us two being together would soon override any unhappiness on my part. They can't really understand what it's like when you can't trust your partner, your spouse at that. God, I hope they never have to understand that. I would never wish for either of them to be cheated on. Now I have talked with my ex-wife about this on numerous occasions, possibly 100 times by now, about not bringing our adult lives into this and messing up our daughters in and out, as they say. Now, despite my initial apprehension, I will end up talking with them about how their mother's cheating impacted me. I'm not even doing it for myself at that point, but what another user here has said about how they're internalizing this as their way to love has certainly got me worried. I have to make them understand that being cheated on or cheating on someone is not something to be taken lightly or just shrugged off. Regarding Clemens, she's not trying to be a mother figure to them at all. She knows there are only 12 years of difference between them, and that's not really enough for them to see her as a mother figure. Not to mention Clem has no intentions of usurping their mother's place to begin with. Her approach is to just basically wait it out until they stop hoping for their mother and me to get back together. And then eventually, somewhere down the line, the relations between them will be comfortable enough to spend more and more time around each other, which is, if all things go as expected, going to happen sooner or later. And to be fair, my daughters are not exactly being pissy, nor are they disrespectful, full up in her face or behind her back. Hell, they don't actually hate her from what I've gathered. They just prefer me to be back with their mother. That's all. Update. It's been a while since I was first here, and I was reminded recently that I owed an update to the kind and good people here who helped me with our troubles. A lot of things have happened. Among those things, my daughters actually stumbled across my post. I had no idea they even browsed Reddit, let alone this place. When I came home one day from work, I found them crying. They pretty much jumped me, hugged me, wouldn't let me go, and begged me to forgive them. Sadly, they had read one of my replies and found out the dreadful extent of my ex-wife's affair and how much it had devastated me. Took us a while, but we got through it as a family. There was nothing for me to forgive. They're still young, and they love their mother, who took that love and used it to manipulate them. That's on her, not them. There was some much-needed counseling, but after several months, the woman who was helping us heal and move on has said that nothing more needed to be done, and they should only check in with her once in a while rather than continue their weekly sessions. We're closer than we were before, but their relationship with their mother has suffered for it, which I think is completely understandable. But I still caution them about lingering too much on what she did, since I had gotten over what she did all those years ago. That was something also resolved in counseling, both their own and our shared ones, so it's all behind us now. I had a brief confrontation with my ex-wife about it and made it clear that she was to not talk about this getting back together nonsense anymore with our daughters. I can't tell if it really got through to her, but my daughters haven't been pestered about me since then, or they simply ignore their mother and don't bring it up at home. Either way, so long as my daughters are doing fine, I could care less about what my ex-wife is doing. Since the situation had improved, things had also become much better between my daughters and my girlfriend, so much that they actually started talking with her rather than just exchanged curt greetings and goodbyes, even occasionally asking for tips on something, girly stuff, of course. And I can't tell you how much it warmed my heart to see it happening for the first time. I'll admit that also helped me push my thoughts in the direction of proposing to my girlfriend, who had been incredibly supportive and understanding through all of this. We had known each other for a long time now, spent so much time as a couple, and after all this mess, I didn't really think there was anything more I could do to express my love for her. However, I was beaten to the punch 2 months ago. Clemens, together with my daughters, surprised me one day and proposed to me. I have to say that I felt very odd but also very happy, not just the proposal, but that my daughters had actually worked with my girlfriend on surprising me that day with dinner and a night out. To put it simply, I was blown away. It was a small and private ceremony with only our closest friends and family attending. Currently, we're also expecting, and my daughters are looking forward to having a baby brother or sister. Now on to the next story. Story 8. I refused to talk to my sister, so my mom ambushed me with an intervention. Background. I started dating my brother's best friend when I was 16. We were together until I graduated high school when he proposed and I rejected it. There was a lot of drama with my family asking me to reconsider because we could have a long engagement or make a promise to reconcile. My relationship with my brother, 36, suffered for a while, but the one with my sister, 32, never recovered. She was sure my ex was the best fit for me and became unbearable when she started dating my ex's brother. My ex was invited everywhere by my siblings, even to some family holidays, but I didn't say anything since he was their friend too. That is until my sister started to push for us to get back together. My sister did everything from trying to get us on blind dates to making us share a room during holidays. No matter the occasion, my ex was invited to it. After a while, I had enough and asked my parents to intervene. They were clear with my siblings and stopped inviting my ex to things or allowing him to tag along so much. It was slightly better, but while my brother backed off, my sister didn't. It all came to a crash when I met my husband during a semester abroad. He was from another university but the same country, and we just clicked. It was magical for me, and we got engaged after dating for a year. My family was very happy for me except my sister. She kept insisting I was in the honeymoon phase and would grow out of it. I clearly didn't, and after many, I can't express enough how many fights and attempts to reunite me with my ex, I simply let her know if she pulled anything again, I would stop talking to her. What does she do after that warning? Makes me her maid of honor and requests I spend all my time with the bridal party, aka my ex. Inserts one of her friends as my husband's date. We didn't realize until we were at the reception, and the poor girl tried to make a pass at my husband. My sister said that since we are not married, it was okay to explore things with other people. I left the party and the next day spoke with my parents and brother, explained that while I won't make them choose, I will not talk to my sister ever again, and if they try to fix stuff between us, I will simply cut contact with them too. My mom was devastated and tried to negotiate, but my dad and brother said they would respect my decision. Apart from 2 attempts from my mom, I haven't spoken, written, or anything with my sister in the past 6 years. My sister has tried everything to reconcile with me, from tantrums to, but I simply don't talk to her at all. If we are at a family event or dinner, I simply act like she doesn't exist. At first, she made snarky comments or tried to create drama, but since nobody backed her up, she gave up. She did have a meltdown when she was informed she was invited to my wedding but would not be part of any preparation. My brother says he feels guilty for going along with it for so long, and his relationship with my ex has suffered since. My ex and they still talk, but they are not as close anymore. The issue. My mom's birthday was a couple of weeks ago, and I finally announced we are expecting our first child. This is not the first grandchild but is the first granddaughter. Everybody was very happy, except my sister. My mom noted that and asked me for tea the other day. My sixth sense told me not to go, but I wanted to be positive. The first thing I noticed when I arrived was my sister's car. Then, as I entered the door, there was my sister, her husband, my ex, and my ex's mom. They wanted to have an intervention since my childish tactic has gone on for so long. My ex said that he was just trying to be romantic, but he understands I couldn't appreciate it. His mom said I was just hurting my sister for wanting the best for me and she apologized already. So I need to forgive her. I was just sending texts to my family, dad, brother, husband, and looking at my mom in disbelief. My ex had the balls to tell me I was a hurtful person and I need to learn how to act like an adult since I'm having a baby now. Then my mom began reading a letter about how hurt she was, her daughters weren't close, how my sister was wrong but she was well-intended, etc. Then my sister read her letter and began crying and telling me basically another version of what the rest did. I said nothing to anybody, just sat there until my brother arrived. He was angry beyond anything I've ever seen before. He grabbed my stuff and told them all he was really disappointed and disgusted. We went outside and sat in his car until my dad and husband arrived. By then, I was just sobbing, and he kept saying sorry. I am unsure what happened in there, but I sent everybody except mom an email with my lawyer's number and info attached and stated I don't wish to be contacted by any of them ever again. And if they do, I will go to the police. Nobody has contacted me, but I know from my dad that my mom and sister are hysterical. They told him they have to repair things and for my sister to be able to be in my baby's life, maybe possibly being a godmother. My dad is staying with my brother at the moment. They support me, but some others in the family don't. I've even had mutual friends call me since they are worried about my sister's well-being and asking me what happened since she is now going by the narrative my husband is keeping me away from my family. I hate having my business in public, but I did go the public route and posted a long FB post about everything that happened. Sister, ex, and ex's mom are being dragged, which even if it wasn't 100% intended, I feel is deserved. Now my mom has been inconsolable, which does make me feel bad, but not as bad as she made me feel with her little intervention. I agreed to have a talk with her a couple of days ago and laid the ground rules for any possible future interaction, including therapy, family therapy, clear boundaries, no sharing information about me with my sister, and separate holidays. Most important, if she ever pulls anything like this again, she will for sure be cut off. She feels this is too much but is willing to do it. She thought it meant immediate access to baby news and it is all solved, but I told her it is a process and she needs to prove she has improved. My dad and brother refused to talk to my sister, and they keep apologizing for not stopping it earlier. We've forgiven them since they were able to move on and grow. My husband supports whatever I decide. But my mom is unsure cutting my mom's access to her granddaughter is the way to go but says it is ultimately my decision. I am torn about what to do with my mom. Edit. I wanted to post but couldn't. I want to thank you for the amount of support and advice so far. I want to give a little more info that is in my comments since there are too many for me to answer them all individually. My ex and I broke up when I was 18. He is 37 now. The reason for our breakup was that I didn't want to get married or engaged. My sister's insistence comes from the fixation of wanting the both of us to marry brothers and be best friends. My mom has always been so nice to my husband, but I'm beginning to think it was all a facade, which makes me very sad. My ex has been with people since the breakup. He also has 2 kids with an ex, but he's never been married. My sister says that is a very romantic thing to do since he has only ever wanted to marry me. I should also mention his obsessive behavior is not only with me. I know from the grapevine he was very similar with the mother of his children, but now he is refocusing on me because my sister is encouraging it since she needs his help on getting back in my good graces so she can be a good aunt. My brother did start to cut him off when I told my parents I was very uncomfortable with my ex around all the time. I was living away for college but would visit my family during breaks. He also made a very big effort to make my husband feel welcome, which deteriorated his relationship with my ex even more because he felt betrayed by my brother. Nowadays, my husband is one of my brother's closest friends, and he only speaks with my ex when it's about our nephew, sister's son, or to not be rude. Both my parents seem to be supportive of me not wanting to be around my ex so much, but I guess only my dad was in agreement on the day of the tea party. My mom told him she was making me my favorite tea and sweets, but he couldn't stay since we would have quality time together. My dad left to go hang with my uncle since he thought it was a nice sentiment for my mom. He is very pissed off. My husband tried very hard with my sister when they met, but now he just ignores her and believes she is mentally unwell. We don't know if she is or not. Still, there is no excuse for how she behaves. They invited the ex and his mom because they thought it would be good for me to face the root of my issues with my sister, or at least is their official version. Also, we are not Indian, not really religious. My husband and I are from the same race. There is also no wealth disparity between my ex and my husband. If there is, it would be in favor of my husband. Lastly, my in-laws, both my brother's wife and husband's sisters, are enraged about the situation. My husband and his sisters will be talking with their mom about her comment. My brother and his wife are considering going and see with my mom permanently. In the meanwhile, they will not allow her to see my nephews for a bit. The more I read, the more I think I might have to go and see with my mom for the sake of my kid. My husband is heartbroken to think all their interactions were faked, but says he is even more enraged she made me cry and doubt I was a good person. I realize there are still countless conversations to have with my family about my mom, but I will definitely be going for a restraining order against my sister and the ex. Update 1. The state of my family so far. I had a conversation with my mother, but she insists she knew best. I am a bad person, and she will be getting grandparents' rights or even custody. I am not what she says, but I still panic, so we sent her a letter about it. My dad moved out, definitely. He told her that he could not sign on to her terrorizing his kid. My brother and his wife also decided to go and see. I know it seems very sudden, but I think I undersold the level of despair I had after the intervention. My husband told them afterward they had to think very well about what they appreciated and to be kind and receptive to everything but would not raise a kid in a toxic environment. Reason 3,271,637 Why I love my husband. My husband is very heartbroken about my mom and her fakeness. He says she will never get anything from him. That is as much as revenge goes here. My husband and sisters talked to my mom about her comment and made her understand why it was very out of line. As many of you assume, she is a very loving mom from a loving family. My dad and brother keep apologizing for any role they played in this. My dad can't believe it went to this point. He says it is still surreal for him. Regardless, they support me no matter what and say they are willing to help me fight whatever ridiculous fight my mom or sister put up. Update 2. I want to thank the lovely messages and encouraging words. I decided to post it here so it wouldn't be deleted like the original was. Things are great and horrible at the same time, but I'm trying to remain positive about everything. My brother and his wife sat my nephews down and explained that grandma was ill and tried to hurt mommy and the little cousin. They explained grandma would not be part of their lives anymore, but that doesn't mean she doesn't love them. It was really hard, but the kids are smart. They were also told another aunt is no longer in their life, but they don't care because they dislike her, not because of me alone, simply because she is not exactly great with them either. My mom lost it when she was informed and started claiming she had rights and she will get to see her grandchildren. My dad is looking for a permanent place but will stay with us until January, mainly due to my brother's in-laws coming to visit and we having the space. He is really sad, has called divorce lawyers already, moved bank stuff, etc. He has been getting countless emails, messages, and calls from my mom, but he doesn't reply to anything. The lawyer told him to not block her right now. He considered maybe forgiving her, but I got a huge spike in my blood pressure a couple of days after my last post here because she decided to come to my place with my sister. My sister had never been to my home. My mom knew I didn't want her there, but I guess that doesn't matter anymore. The cleaning lady let them in since she knows my mom, and I haven't had the time to inform her she was not allowed to come in anymore. I was just coming from some errands and I saw the car. This time I didn't get in. I called all of my relatives. My in-laws, husband's sister, was the one closer to me. She confronted them and told them either they leave or I call the police on them for trespassing. They left, and I started feeling bad. We went to the doctor, and they told me all the excitement was not good and I needed to start relaxing or it would hurt the baby. My dad went home with my brother, uncle, and my husband and took every single thing he could think of. My husband says my sister was there too, and she kept screaming at him that he destroyed her family. My dad told my mom and sister they almost killed the baby, and he also doesn't want to talk to any of them again. My sister kept sending messages to my brother begging for help, but it's not happening. I am devastated and very sad for my nephew since he is losing so much of his family because his mother has some wacky ideas. But it is what it is. As per the custody and grandparent rights my mom wants to throw around so much, my lawyer sent her a letter stating she caused harm to my health and the baby, and if she keeps harassing me, it will become an official legal matter. My brother also sent her a letter. Using her harassing of me, both mom and sister have refused to go to therapy. They might be mentally ill, but with all of this coming to light, it is obvious they have been in agreement for a long time. I will focus on spending the holidays with my family, being healthy, and going to therapy. Now on to the next story. Story 9. My boyfriend proposed at my aunt's funeral. I rejected him and I think our relationship is over. Me, 26F, and my boyfriend, 30M, have been dating for 3 years. We don't live together because we both want to get married first, because our parents wouldn't agree to cohabiting before marriage. I've been fairly obvious about wanting to get married, and my boyfriend has picked up on it. Last week, we went to my great-aunt's funeral. Although I didn't know her very well, I was still upset, and it was really hard to see how much it hurt my mother. So after the funeral, we went to a hall that we rented to cater to the other mourners and to remember her. My boyfriend saw this as a chance to propose. This left me mortified, and everyone was staring at us for using this to make it about ourselves. I said no, and he got angry and walked off, saying that I'm the one who wants to get married, so I shouldn't care where he proposes. He also said that if I truly loved him, I would say yes. He's ignoring me right now, and he won't give me a chance to explain. In any other scenario, I would say yes, but I didn't think it was the right place or time. I'm wondering if I'm the one in the wrong because I rejected him, even though I want to get married. When I asked my coworker, she agreed that what I did was wrong, but I want some more opinions from people who don't know me. Edit. I'm seeing a lot of comments talking about how we let our parents dictate our lives. So I just want to clarify that we both live on our own and have spent long periods of time at each other's apartments. The only reason we don't live together is out of respect for our parents' views. I have a roommate and he doesn't, so I spend most of my time at his place. We just don't officially live together. Thank you for all your responses. We're both speaking to each other about everything, and we both agree that we should have communicated more about our future together. The situation is progressing, however, I'm reevaluating our relationship and things that have happened recently in the past. He's adamant about being right because he believes that he was trying to cheer everyone up by giving us something to celebrate instead of mourn. I didn't realize how emotionally immature he really is. Update. A lot has happened since my first post. Firstly, me and my boyfriend have since broken up. This was for a multitude of reasons, the biggest of which was that he cheated on me. My former boyfriend and I had not been living together, but I did spend most of my time staying at his place as I had a roommate and he never did. However, when I went to visit him, his friend told me that he had been cheating on me and had gotten another girl pregnant. This crushed me because we had been dating for nearly 4 years. This led to us breaking up. When I questioned him about why he had cheated, he told me he wasn't the type to commit to anyone, despite initially pleading with me with the promise that we would be in a committed relationship. This was hard for me to understand as we had been speaking about marriage in the future. When we used to talk about marriage, he would always say that he would never be happy in a marriage where he got proposed to, as it would be an insult to his masculinity. Looking back on this, I should have realized that he had many noticeable toxic traits. He proposed to me at my aunt's funeral, which is something I will never understand. When I asked him why he did that, he initially claimed it was to make everyone happy, but when I pushed him for more information, he told me it was to show his lover that I was a bad person. This is because he was cheating on me with my aunt's friend's daughter, who was at the funeral. So he proposed to me to show that our relationship is over to that girl in order to justify why he was cheating, even though he knew that I was grieving. Since we broke up about 3 weeks after the funeral, his friend who exposed the affair to me told me that because she was pregnant, he had to find a way to make her not leave him and chose the funeral to make a public display for her. I haven't seen him since the breakup, and his friend moved all of my stuff out of the apartment for me so I don't have to see him. His family is very strict, and because he is having a child out of wedlock, they have refused to help him, so he has been contacting me for help. I haven't responded, nor do I intend to respond because I will not lower my self-worth to help someone who never truly cared about me. Since our breakup, my life has improved as I can now do the things that he never wanted me to do, and I've now realized how lucky I am that we never married. Now on to the next story. Story 10. I'm not allowing my bratty kids to my house anymore. Aita. My ex and I have been divorced for 3 years and share custody of our children, 5M and 7F. The kids are with me on Wednesdays and every other weekend, but the ex and I have sometimes switched things around depending on what we have going on, and that has worked well for us in the past. There were several factors that ultimately led to our divorce, but a huge thing was that my ex babied to the extreme. Both kids breastfed until age 3, and my son was spoon-fed until almost 5 years old. These are just examples, but on a day-to-day basis, there was a lot happening that I just couldn't accept. This past Wednesday, I had the kids. I had a date night plan with my fiancé that night as well, and so I got a babysitter. I travel regularly for work, and this was the only night this week that we could celebrate my fiancé's birthday. But getting a babysitter while I have the kids is not a normal occurrence. 2 hours in, I get a call from the babysitter who is totally overwhelmed because my 5-year-old is on the toilet after going number 2 and refuses to wipe himself. He says he needs mom or dad. I can literally hear the wailing in the background. That is how stressed this kid was. My fiancé and I end up having to drive an hour back home, and when we get there, my 5-year-old is still on the toilet waiting. At this point, I am completely mentally exhausted. I try to coach him on wiping and he just will not do it. His mother always does it for him, and I have had to do it when it's my turn to take the kids, but I've been actively working on trying to help him gain independence in the bathroom for the past year or so. I went through this exact thing with my daughter as well, who thankfully no longer has this issue. The next morning, I dropped the kids off at school. I called my ex to let her know that I will not have the kids at my house anymore for as long as she continues to enable this extremely dependent behavior. She, of course, flips out and says I'm a complete jerk, says I am a bad father who doesn't care about his kids. I'm willing to visit them and go for outings, but I can't handle the stress in my home any longer. Causes an extreme disruption in normal everyday activities, and I am just done. It's been a constant fight trying to help these kids learn independence for years now. Having them go back to their moms and then starting right back at square one the next time I get them. My ex says she will be contacting her lawyer for full custody, and at this point, I'm too exhausted to fight. Now on to the next story. Story 11. My dad is trying to force my uncontrollable stepsister on my trip, and I told him I'd never forgive him. Advice needed. I, 17F, am graduating, and my friends and I have already planned a trip to a cabin for the summer before we start college. I have been a babysitter since I was 13, so I have saved up a considerable amount of money. When I was 15, my dad got remarried about a year and a half after my mom passed away. My dad's wife had a 13-year-old daughter, and as soon as we moved in together, they started to push her off on me and force us to do everything together. I don't like my stepsister. She's always throwing tantrums if she doesn't get what she wants. She's spoiled to the point that at my 16th birthday, she got her own special cake so she wouldn't feel left out, and she also blew out the candles on my cake. And when I complained, my dad told me it's time to grow up. Being a sister is about sharing things. I told him I didn't have a sister, and I guess she overheard, and she went on a rampage. The party was ruined. I distanced myself more from them after that. I'm forced to either take her with me to places or stay home with her if I can't take her, or my dad or dad's wife can't watch her or don't want to deal with her. Imagine everything that I said she does with my dad and his wife onto a 15 to 17-year-old me. I was forced to take her bowling with me, and she would not stop trying to dig her hands in the part where the balls come out, and she tried running down the lane, so I had to take her home and my night was ruined. This happens a lot, but they don't care. I have tried to keep this trip a secret from her, but when I was in my room on the phone talking about it over pizza and music, I found out she snuck in and hid in the closet and was eavesdropping. She bursted out asking if she could come, and I told her no and to get out. She started stomping her feet, and she ran out. My friends begged me to not invite her. My dad called me downstairs and asked if she could go because she could use a vacation, and I told him I'm not taking her. They can take her on a vacation, but I'm not watching her for almost 3 weeks alone. My dad's wife called me selfish and that my dad was paying for a portion of it anyway, and if Lily doesn't go, then I don't get to go. I told her she doesn't get a say in any of this. She's not my mom, and to stop forcing her child on me when she created what she is. Lily starts yelling at me about not being a big sister and that I don't want to spend time with her. I snap and tell her I don't. She ran away crying, and my dad said he won't pay for the rest of my trip if I don't take her. So I told him if he does that, I will not be talking to him anymore, nor will I forgive him for it. He said I'm being dramatic and she isn't bad. So I grabbed a bag and went to my aunt's house, my mom's sister, and told her what happened. And she said she would put up what he took away, and when I go to college, I can stay with her. I told my dad what I was doing, and he blew up at me and said I was being a brat and they're my family now and not my aunt. As far as I know, she does not have any disabilities. She's been to doctors and therapy. She's just insanely spoiled, and that's how she's always gotten her way when told no. The first time I met her, everyone agreed on Mexican except her, and she was yelling in the car for 10 minutes before she calmed down by her mom appeasing her. Then she goes back on her phone, texting. If she does, then that explains why she acts that way, and I can take it that she can't help it, but I still shouldn't be forced to watch her 24/7. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.